$100,000 if you get this supercar running, he announced to the laughing crowd. But when you fail, you'll publicly admit women know nothing about engines. The humiliating bet was set. I was their afternoon's entertainment. $100,000, Julian Thorne repeated, the words slithering from his mouth like expensive poison. He adjusted a diamond-encrusted Audemars Piguet on his wrist, the gesture designed to draw maximum attention. He was speaking to me, a 30-year-old black woman in grease-stained overalls, standing beside his broken-down, custom blue Electrico Ferrari SF90 Straydale. But when you fail, and you will fail, I want you to look into every camera here and admit that women have no place in a garage. Aria Evans, stood motionless. Around us, inside the sterile, white expanse of Apex Prestige Imports in Miami's design district, at least 20 of Julian's wealthy friends watched as if I were an animal in a cage. Their condescending laughter bounced off the polished concrete floors and floor-to-ceiling glass walls. The air, thick with the scent of expensive leather and competing colognes, felt suffocating. They were already placing bets, their voices a low murmur of amusement. I'll put $5,000 on her giving up in 10 minutes. One of them snickered, pulling out his phone to start a live stream. The situation had spiraled out of control with sickening speed. I had only come to the dealership to pick up a rare transmission sensor for a client's vintage Maserati. But as I waited, I overheard the head mechanic giving Julian a completely wrong diagnosis for his Ferrari. The hybrid system wasn't communicating with the ECU, he'd said, suggesting a full system replacement. Politely, I pointed out that the symptoms suggested a firmware conflict, not a hardware failure. That was my mistake. Look at this, everyone. Julian had boomed, seizing the opportunity for a spectacle. The little lady here thinks she knows more than our Ferrari certified expert. He paused, letting the humiliation hang in the air. I bet she thinks a piston is something you use for gardening. What Julian didn't know was that I grew up rebuilding engines in my father's dusty garage, that I held a master's degree in mechanical engineering from MIT, that I had spent 3 years as a lead technical consultant for a major European automaker, solving the very problems their own engineers couldn't crack. But in this room, my credentials were invisible. All they saw was a young black woman who had dared to step out of her perceived place. So, little lady, Julian continued, his voice dripping with arrogance. My SF90 has been dead for 2 weeks. For different mechanics have given up. They say it's an unsolvable electronic ghost. He crossed his arms, a predator enjoying his game. If you're as brilliant as you seem to think you are, prove it. I glanced at the supercar. Even from a distance, I could see the subtle signs the others had missed. The almost imperceptible flicker of a dashboard light when the start button was pressed, the faint smell of ozone suggesting a short in a low-voltage system, the specific error code sequence I recognized from a prototype I once worked on. To me, the car was screaming its diagnosis. And what if I can? I asked, my voice steady. I refused to let them see me waver. Impossible. Julian laughed, a harsh, barking sound. But if by some divine miracle you manage it, I'll transfer $100,000 to you on the spot. He leaned in, his smile turning cruel. But when you fail, not only will you make your little admission, you will also have to personally apologize to every man in this room for wasting our valuable time with your charade. The crowd murmured with excitement. This was better than a Grand Prix. This was a public execution of someone's pride. I took a deep breath, picturing my father's garage, the smell of oil and metal, the satisfying click of a wrench tightening a bolt. I remembered his words, meant to protect me, but which had always fueled my fire. This is no place for a girl. Aria? I accept, I said, the 2 words cutting through the noise. A sudden silence fell over the showroom, broken only by the sound of another phone camera being activated. Julian extended his hand, his eyes gleaming. It's a deal, but prepare yourself for an epic public failure. As our hands shook, I kept my expression unreadable. What these privileged men saw as their afternoon's entertainment was about to become a very expensive lesson, and I was going to be the one to teach it. The first sign that Julian intended to maximize my humiliation came when he gestured for champagne. A waiter in a crisp white jacket began circulating with a tray of flutes. The dealership was no longer a business. It was a Roman Colosseum, and I was the main event. "Everyone, get comfortable," Julian announced, raising his glass. "Our resident U2 mechanic is about to perform her magic trick." The laughter was louder this time, fueled by alcohol and arrogance. The pressure was immense, but it was a familiar feeling. It transported me back in time. I was 16 again, standing in my father's dimly lit garage. I had just spent a week secretly working on a neighbor's 1967 Ford Mustang, a car my dad and his crew had declared a lost cause due to a complex ignition problem. I traced the wiring diagrams, found a corroded ground wire hidden deep within the chassis, and replaced it. When I turned the key, the V8 engine, silent for a decade, had roared to life. I ran to my father, my hands black with grease, my heart pounding with pride. He looked at the car, then at me, and a sad smile touched his lips. "You got the gift, kid," he'd said, wiping a smudge from my cheek. "But this is no place for a girl. It's a hard, dirty world, and they'll never give you a fair shot." His words, meant as a shield, had become my armor. They were the reason I pushed harder, studied longer, and worked smarter than every man I ever met in this field. "Hey, Earth to the mechanic." Julian's voice snapped me back to the present. "Have you given up already? Because you can still walk away. We'll just assume you came to your senses." I ignored him and walked toward the Ferrari. I placed my hands on the carbon fiber body, closing my eyes for a moment, feeling for the machine's pulse. There it was, an almost imperceptible, high-frequency vibration emanating from the engine bay, a telltale sign of a conflicting electrical signal. The other mechanics had been looking for a broken part. I knew I was hunting a ghost in the code. "May I open the hood?" I asked calmly. "By all means, Professor," Julian sneered. "But you're going to see the same thing everyone else did. An engine far too complex for." He trailed off as he saw the focus in my eyes. In less than a minute of visual inspection, I confirmed my suspicion. It wasn't just a simple firmware conflict. Someone had installed a ghost-coded aftermarket ECU patch, likely promising more power, but so poorly written that it was now at war with the Ferrari's sophisticated hybrid management system. It was an amateur, reckless mistake. "Who was the last person to work on this car?" I asked, my tone professional but sharp. "What does it matter?" Julian shot back, a flicker of defensiveness in his eyes. "The problem is it doesn't start. You said you could fix it." I saw it then. The way he avoided my gaze. The slight tensing of his jaw. He knew more than he was letting on. There was a story here. "Oh, I'll fix it," I said, my confidence unwavering. "But I'll need some specific tools you won't have here." "Tools?" One of the dealership mechanics scoffed, clearly threatened. "What kind of tools?" "A multi-channel oscilloscope, a factory-spec ECU programmer for the latest Ferrari hybrid systems, and a proprietary diagnostic interface." I listed, then paused, seeing their blank stares. Things that specialists who actually work on these cars would know about. The silence was thick with their discomfort. "Special tools, huh?" Julian recovered, his mocking tone returning. "Or a special excuse to run away. I bet you don't even know where to start." "It's not an excuse," I replied, pulling out my phone. "I'm calling my supplier. The equipment will be here in 2 hours." What I didn't say was that my supplier was my former colleague and friend, the head of technical analysis for Ferrari North America. And he wouldn't just bring the tools. He would bring the full weight and authority of the manufacturer. As I made the call, I heard Julian mutter to his friends, 2 hours of free theater. Let's see how long she can keep up this act. I ended the call and faced him directly. "The tools will be here in 2 hours. Shall I get to work prepping the vehicle? Or do you have any more comments?" "Work away," Julian said with a venomous smile. "But when you fail, remember your promise. You're going to admit you try to fool men who have dedicated their lives to these machines." "Perfect," I replied, my voice a calm counterpoint to his rage. "And when I succeed, I hope you have the courage to admit your own mistakes." Every taunt, every dismissive glance was just another piece of kindling on a fire that had been burning inside me for years. They thought they were breaking me down. They had no idea they were fueling the very storm that was about to consume them all. The next 2 hours were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Julian and his friends treated the showroom like their private lounge, ordering another round of champagne and making increasingly cruel jokes at my expense. They filmed TikToks, posing with the dead Ferrari and captioning them with things like #FeministMechanicFL and "Some people should stick to the kitchen." "I bet the tools never even show up," laughed a man named Jonathan, an heir to some hotel fortune. "It's a classic bluff. She's just buying time before she runs out crying." I found a quiet corner and sat, observing. I wasn't ignoring them. I was studying Julian. Every time someone mentioned the car's modification history, he would become tense, changing the subject with forced joviality. He was hiding something, and I was getting closer to figuring out what it was. Right on schedule, a vehicle pulled up to the dealership's glass facade. It wasn't a grimy repair van. It was a sleek, unmarked black Mercedes Sprinter, the kind used for discreet, high-value transport. The only marking was a tiny, almost invisible line of text on the side. Ferrari Technical Services. The room fell silent. The party was over. A man in a sharp, dark gray Ferrari-branded uniform stepped out. He was tall, with a calm, authoritative presence. "I'm looking for Aria Evans," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "That's me, Leo," I replied, standing up. Leo Rivera, Ferrari North America's chief technical analyst, was the man I had spent 2 years working alongside on a top-secret hybrid powertrain project. He knew my capabilities better than anyone. "I brought everything you asked for," he said, his eyes doing a quick, professional sweep of the room. He began unloading cases of equipment that made the dealership's mechanics stare in disbelief. A military-grade diagnostic rig, a factory ECU interface, tools so specialized that most certified dealers never even saw them. "Leo, this is a bit of an unusual situation," I said quietly, gesturing discreetly toward the crowd of gawking men. "I saw the live stream on my way over," he replied, his voice equally low. "I also have a feeling the problem here isn't just technical. Do you want me to stay and provide official oversight?" His offer was a godsend. I wasn't just getting an assistant. I was getting an official witness from the manufacturer. Any discovery I made about unauthorized work on this vehicle would now be on the official record. "That would be perfect," I said. Julian, seeing his control of the narrative slipping away, strode over nervously. "Who is this guy? You can't bring in outside help for a personal bet." Leo turned to face him and extended a hand, holding a business card. "Leo Rivera, Chief Technical Analyst, Ferrari North America." He introduced himself, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I am here solely to provide Miss Evans with the factory-authorized equipment she requested. She will be performing all the diagnostic and repair work herself." The card was passed from one trembling hand to another among Julian's friends. The circus atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a chilling seriousness. This was no longer a joke. "Official, from Ferrari," one of them stammered. "She knows people at Ferrari?" The shift in the room was palpable. The smirks were gone, replaced by expressions of confusion and dawning apprehension. They had mocked a mechanic. They were now faced with an expert who had the direct backing of the brand they so desperately used to define their status. Julian Thorne had made a terrible, terrible miscalculation. I connected the first piece of Leo's equipment to the Ferrari's diagnostic port. The screen of the ruggedized laptop flickered to life, displaying streams of data that made Leo's eyebrows shoot up. "Aria, are you seeing this?" he muttered, pointing to a series of recurring error codes that were clearly not standard factory faults. "I see it," I replied, my voice calm but my eyes burning with the thrill of the hunt. The ECU was flashed with unauthorized firmware. Approximately 3 months ago. And look here, a third-party performance module was installed without proper calibration. "That's a serious breach," Leo said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Unauthorized modifications of this nature can create critical safety failures and instantly void the vehicle's factory warranty." Julian turned a shade paler. "Wait a minute. That has nothing to do with the bet. You just have to get the car running." "Actually," I countered, pointing to a new set of data as the diagnostic software dug deeper, it has everything to do with it. Because whoever installed this patch did such a catastrophically poor job that they created a logic loop in the hybrid management system. The car is literally fighting itself. It's not broken. It's been sabotaged. For the next hour, I worked with methodical precision, Leo acting as my silent assistant, handing me tools. I wasn't just fixing the car. I was performing an autopsy on a crime. Each line of corrupt code, each improperly installed wire, was another piece of evidence. Finally, I physically removed the aftermarket module. It was a cheap piece of plastic with a poorly soldered circuit board. Interesting, I commented, holding it up for Leo to see. This is a counterfeit. It's branded to look like a high-end German performance chip, but it's a cheap Chinese knockoff. This thing could have fried the entire electrical system. Counterfeit. Leo leaned in, his expression hardening. This is illegal. Whoever installed this put the owner's life in danger. Julian was now visibly sweating. Look, maybe we should just stop here. The car working is the important thing, not some investigation. Mr. Thorne, I interrupted, my voice cold and sharp. You mentioned 4 different mechanics tried to fix this car. Can you tell me where these modifications were made? I don't remember exactly, he stammered. Leo was already typing on his tablet. He frowned. Mr. Thorne, our official service records show this vehicle has never had any authorized performance modifications. Any work of this nature should have been logged with headquarters. You have records of everything? One of Julian's friends asked, his voice laced with a new kind of fear. Of course, Leo replied. Every Ferrari has a complete digital service history, especially when it involves the powertrain electronics. I continued my work, but my purpose had shifted. I was no longer just a mechanic proving her worth. I was an investigator building a case. Every counterfeit part, every sign of shoddy workmanship, was being logged by official Ferrari equipment. Leo, I said, connecting the final cable of the diagnostic rig, would you please begin an official technical report on our findings? Immediately, he confirmed, understanding the gravity of the request. Full report, documenting unauthorized modifications, counterfeit parts, and potential for catastrophic failure. The silence in the showroom was absolute. The men who had been laughing and betting just an hour ago now looked like defendants in a courtroom. Julian played his last, desperate card. Look, this is all fascinating, but the deal was simple. Start the car, or admit you can't. I stopped my work and looked him directly in the eye. Mr. Thorne, the car will run perfectly. But we have a much bigger problem now. I let the statement hang in the air, because someone sold you fake, dangerous parts that could have killed you. And I have a very strong feeling you know exactly who that someone was. The look of pure panic on Julian's face told me I had hit the bullseye. This was never just about a cruel bet, and I was about to expose the entire rotten truth. With the counterfeit module removed and the corrupt code purged, I began the final step, reprogramming the Ferrari's engine control unit with the official factory-spec firmware. The progress bar on the laptop screen filled slowly, each percentage point and nail in Julian's coffin. When it reached 100%, a green check mark appeared with a soft chime that echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. It's done, I announced. Leo, would you do the honors of recording the final test? Leo positioned a professional camera he'd brought, aiming it directly at the car, but also capturing Julian's terrified expression in the frame. Ready when you are, Aria. I slid into the driver's seat. The plush leather felt cool and welcoming. I took a moment, my hand hovering over the red start button on the steering wheel. All eyes were on me. I could feel the weight of their prejudice, their doubt, and their dawning fear. I pressed the button. The result was not a simple ignition. It was an explosion. A sharp crack of ignition followed by the piercing, high-fidelity shriek of a twin-turbo V8 engine waking from a forced slumber. The sound was clean, powerful, and perfect. It was the sound of an Italian masterpiece running exactly as its creators intended. It was the sound of justice. The sound wave vibrated through the showroom, rattling the champagne flutes on the tray. The silence that followed was one of pure, unadulterated shock. Impossible, Julian whispered, stumbling toward the car as if it were a ghost. Al, how did you do that? Simple. I replied, switching off the engine and stepping out of the car with the easy grace of someone who had just finished a routine job. I removed the garbage someone installed in your car and restored it to its original, brilliant state. Leo stepped forward, tablet in hand. Mr. Thorne, I need to officially inform you of our findings. His voice was now formal, devoid of any warmth. This vehicle was subjected to modifications that our analysis shows would have led to a catastrophic thermal event, a fire, within the next 500 miles of operation. Fire? Asked Jonathan, the hotel heir, looking horrified. I'm not guessing, Leo stated flatly. The data is unequivocal. Miss Evans didn't just fix your car. It's very likely she saved your life. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. By the way, Miss Evans is not just some mechanic. For 3 years, she was a senior consultant in our hybrid powertrain division. She helped write the code that runs this car. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Okay, she fixed it. Congratulations, Julian stammered, trying to regain a shred of control. Now about my money. Hold on, I said, taking an envelope Leo discreetly passed to me. Before we talk about my payment, we need to discuss who installed these parts. What findings? Julian asked, his voice cracking. Leo connected his laptop to a large display screen on the wall. The counterfeit chip has a traceable serial number, he explained, as a string of digits appeared on the screen. It was sold by a company called Thorne Innovations. The silence was absolute. Every eye in the room swiveled to Julian, who was now drenched in sweat. That's ridiculous, he protested. Mr. Thorne, Leo interrupted, displaying a new document on the screen. Here are the state incorporation records. Thorne Innovations. Majority shareholder, with a 60% stake, Julian Thorne. The bomb had detonated. Julian hadn't just been a victim. He was the perpetrator. He had installed fake parts in his own car, created an unsolvable problem, and planned to use the situation to humiliate me and prove his twisted, prejudiced worldview. Wait, Jonathan Berkshire snarled, stepping toward Julian, his face purple with rage. Thorne Innovations? You sold me a performance kit for my Porsche 911 GT3 last month. It's been in and out of the shop for weeks. And my McLaren, another man shouted. You swore those parts were factory approved. The scene devolved into chaos. Julian was no longer a respected figure. He was a con artist who had endangered his own friends to fuel his ego. Mr. Thorne, Leo said formally, as an official representative of Ferrari, I am informing you that a formal investigation is being launched. Our legal team will be in contact regarding trademark infringement and the sale of counterfeit goods. I walked up to Julian, who now looked small and pathetic. About our bet, I said calmly. You owe me $100,000. But you also promised that if you were wrong, you'd admit a few things. I gestured to Leo's camera. It's time for your public confession. 6 months later, I was signing a contract in a penthouse office overlooking the Miami skyline. The document made me the new technical director for the largest luxury automotive group on the West Coast. My salary had quadrupled, and I was now in charge of a team of 80 elite mechanics and technicians. Aria, the CEO said, shaking my hand warmly. The Thorne Innovation scandal you uncovered sent shockwaves through the industry. Your new diagnostic protocols are already being implemented in 17 of our dealerships. You didn't just fix a car that day. You helped protect our entire business. The story had gone viral. Leo's recording of Julian's forced, stammering confession had been leaked, garnering millions of views and turning me into an unlikely national symbol of competence and integrity. Julian Thorne's fate was a stark contrast. His company was shut down by federal agents. He was buried in lawsuits from his former friends and clients, losing his fortune and his social standing. The last anyone saw of him was in a viral TikTok video. He was working at a shabby used car dealership, ironically, right next door to the state-of-the-art high-tech garage my new company had just built for me to oversee. In the video, he was trying and failing to explain the features of a 2012 Honda Civic. The irony is poetic, isn't it? Leo remarked, raising a glass to me at my promotion party. The man who declared women know nothing about engines now works for a company whose most complex security protocols were designed by the black woman he tried to destroy. I smiled, looking out at my new team celebrating around us. It was a diverse group, 40% women, 30% people of color, all hired for one reason. They were the best at what they did. You know what the real victory was, Leo? I said, watching them. It wasn't the money, and it wasn't ruining Julian. It was proving that excellence has no color, no gender. Prejudice is just a confession of one's own limitations. My real revenge wasn't seeing him fall. It was rising to a height he could never have imagined. Aria's story shows us that the most powerful response to prejudice isn't anger. It's a level of competence so undeniable it forces the world to change. They tried to use racism and sexism to break her, but they only revealed their own corruption and weakness. What are your thoughts on this? Share a story in the comments about a time you overcame someone's prejudice or low expectations. Let's inspire each other. Please comment with respect for everyone's experience. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to see that skill and integrity will always win in the end.